I have 2 minutes. One minute. I see it's 9:30.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Western Municipal Water District Board meeting. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and ask our members of the audience and the members of the board to silence your electronic devices, please. You don't want to be that person. We appreciate that. And at this time, Madam Secretary, can we go ahead and call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Pursuant to Western Municipal Water District Resolution 3260, in an effort to protect the public health, prevent the spread of COVID-19, and because state and local officials are recommending measures to promote social distancing, the public may view this board meeting virtually, via Zoom, and in person. This meeting is being live streamed at WMWD.com and will be video recorded for on-demand viewing and broadcasting purposes. As stated on the agenda, members of the public who wish to comment on any item on the agenda may make comments in person, virtually via Zoom, or by submitting comments on the district's website. Comments received on the district's website before 4:30 p.m. November 15th, 2022 will be made part of the board meeting record. For those participating in the Zoom meeting who wish to provide public comments, please indicate such by using the raise hand feature, and we will call on you individually. For those participating by telephone who wish to provide public comment, you may do so by pressing *6 to unmute yourself and *9 to activate the raise hand feature. If there is more than one caller, you will be identified and called on one at a time. Any public comment will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. However, the presiding officer reserves the right to reduce the amount of time you will be allowed to speak to ensure that all members of the public have an opportunity to provide their comment. I will now take roll call for the meeting. Due to the complexity of conducting this meeting by Zoom and telephonically, I will not be taking roll call for staff members or the public at this time. Director Roten.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Director Isvy.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Good morning. Director Gardner.
Good morning, I am here also.
Good morning. Director Torres.
Present.
Good morning. President Dinstedt.
Good morning, I'm present.
Thank you. President Dinstedt, you do have a quorum today.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll go ahead into the Pledge of Allegiance this morning. We do have someone joining us from our operations staff. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Shalon Peterson. I've worked for Western for a little over a year. I am an operator at the wastewater facility. Now, if we're ready and begin for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We certainly appreciate that, and it's wonderful to have our operations folks come out here and lead us in the pledge. So thank you, and welcome to the organization. Okay, at this time, we're going to go ahead and move into public comments. And today, folks, public comments are this is for general public comments. This is for items that are not currently posted on our agenda today. So if you are speaking on an agenda item today, you'll be called on at that time to make public comments regarding that item. This is for matters that are under the jurisdiction of this agency to be able to act upon, and we ask that you be in compliance with those requirements this morning. Madam Secretary, do you have any comments under public comment, general public comment for any non-agenda items this morning?
I've received no written requests under general public comments, and I see no request to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move forward to our presentation this morning. We have Ed Manning, who is joining us from KP Public Affairs to give us a state legislative overview. Ed, so nice to see you in person, not on Zoom, to get an update after so many years now of COVID. Welcome back to our organization.
Thank you, Chair Denstad and board members. It's great to be here in person. There was a memo from the Senate yesterday about loosening up some of the restrictions. So hopefully we'll be back to normal in Sacramento too. Whatever normal is for Sacramento. Anyway, it's another issue. Let me advance. How do I advance this tab?
Just say
Oh,
next.
next. You have people. Okay. Thanks. So I want to do a little overview of last year's legislative session, some of the highlights of the budget bills, and then sort of where we are and what we're looking forward to next year, including just a snippet on elections. So last year was somewhat like the year before. 2022, or we're still in 2022, but the legislative session in 2021-22 was really about budget. And we had another revenue surplus in 22, record setting. We spent more money than we had the previous year or ever before. A record number of budget bills. We'd pass budget and then do more and more and more. Part of it was to keep up with the money, and sort of it's become the last couple of years a big change in the way we do budgets. We used to do one budget bill and maybe one cleanup bill. Now we're doing the budget bill to meet the deadline. The budget bill is broad and has wide parameters. So we meet the deadline of June 30th, but then we start filling in through subsequent budget bills. We call them budget bill juniors. So budget action goes through most of the session now, as opposed to really ending where it used to in June. But we also have trailer bills. Trailer bills implements the policy in the budget, and we do more and more policy as part of the budget through trailer bills. And so budget is more than just spending money anymore. It's also significant policy making associated with the spending, especially when we're funding major programs. And so, it's a pattern that's, I think, here to stay. And it certainly keeps us on our toes. It presents great opportunities, though, especially for the water community, I think, going forward. Next slide, please. So in terms of the legislative workload, 2,055 bills introduced, sort of par for the course the last couple of years. There was a little bit of slowdown during COVID. Over 1,000 bills sent to the governor. Of those, a very high percentage, 997 bills were signed and 169 bills vetoed, and I'll talk about that a little more. Next slide. Every year we focus on a set of priorities and try to keep that big picture in mind as we look at individual bills that get introduced. This year, in terms of budget and some of the policy prerogatives, we really focused on major water supply projects in terms of the state's water future and making sure that there was nothing passed that interfered with the ability of state or local agencies to invest in things like conveyance, storage, groundwater or above ground, and trying to make sure that we have some certainty that those projects can ultimately get built and deliver water. And also looking to make sure that there was an emphasis on local and regional drought resiliency in terms of projects and policies. Delta conveyance has been an ongoing theme for us for a number of years to make sure that we stay on track with the ability to move water from north to south without the current obstacles that we have. A new conveyance system, the main feature, right, is to move water around the delta in a way that we don't have the pumps operating and we don't have entrainment and all the issues we do now with the Endangered Species Act, which even when we have an abundance of water, which we haven't had in a number of years, even if you have a lot of water supply north of the delta, currently your ability to get it through the delta is restricted by the Endangered Species Act. It's the best way to think about it is you have a straw that's pinched, and that straw is artificially pinched. And so having conveyance will help us get more water south when it is available. Water conservation, ensure that water efficiency and conservation programs, including legislation we negotiated during the Brown administration, was not significantly changed. I'll talk about that. It was significantly changed, but we tried to not radically change it. And that includes indoor and outdoor water use efficiency standards, which did change. And then trying to emphasize local drought planning, all the efficiency measures that the local agencies have taken over the last decade, but especially in the Brown administration, where during the drought, the administration sort of artificially set reduction requirements without taking into account all the work we'd done. And we negotiated a whole package of bills during the Brown administration to try to update urban water management plans and the efficiency conservation measures that local water districts would take, and with great success. Next slide, please. Another issue, constituents of emerging concern, or CEC as it's called. So basically trying to make sure that we're thoughtful about prioritizing and regulating new pollutants that come forward. Sometimes there's an effort to get to a zero standard, sort of a knee-jerk reaction without taking the time to look hard at the science. PFAS being one of the chemicals that you hear about right now. And we want to make sure that we have a thoughtful process. So when we set the standards for treatment and for water quality standards, that we're taking a really science-based approach to that. And COVID-19 assistance, 2 years ago, we were able to secure significant funding for Western and for others to help pay down the unpaid utility bills of your ratepayers because of COVID. And there was an ongoing effort last year to try to fill in the gaps. We had artificially created a dateline for when those arrearages would be paid, but it didn't really cover all of the COVID debt. So last year we tried to find some of the remaining money and fill in that gap. Ultimately that didn't happen for a variety of reasons, but it still may happen next year. Next. So last year, I'll just go through quickly because we could spend all day talking about all these bills. But so the Quirk bill 2639 died on the assembly floor, and that was a bill that would have stopped any ability to get new water rights permits and to some extent constrain operations of the State Water Project potentially by basically saying you can't move a point of diversion, you can't get temporary permits until the Water Quality Control Plan, Delta Plan as it's called, was completed. That's a process the Water Board's been working on a number of years with other agencies, and we're working on a thing called the voluntary agreements, which feeds into it. And without getting into all the weeds, the Quirk bill really would have artificially shut the door on our ability to have flexibility in operating the system without taking into account all the constructive work that's going on with the voluntary agreements. So we were able to stop that bill on the floor. Similarly, AB 979, the Fraser bill, he had tried to use sea level rise as an effort to slow down conveyance. We were able to stop that. Friedman and Hertzberg both had urban water use objective bills. SB 1157, Hertzberg's bill passed. We were concerned and worked very hard against that bill, mainly because the bill did not include all the variance provisions and waiver provisions that we would have liked it to see, and artificially lowered the urban water use objective to a gallon per day standard that by all objective considerations was unachievable and extremely costly. And so we're in the implementation phase. I mean, the good news from my perspective is that Department of Water Resources, mainly because of our coalition's effort to raise significant issues, has already moved forward some variances, some flexibility, especially on a recycled water credit, which we were fighting for. So even though we didn't get the specifics in the bill, they clearly got the message, and they're showing a lot more flexibility than they did even a year ago. So that's good. And I think we'll be looking at that as it moves forward. AB 2142, Gabriel, that's a turf replacement bill that would make sure that people who get do turf replacement for conservation don't get a tax bill from the state. So unfortunately, it's income if you get your lawn replaced with more efficient, less water intensive outdoor landscaping. And that is an unwelcome tax bill for most of your ratepayers. So this bill basically fixed that so that it would not be taxable at the state level, which is a great thing for your ratepayers and will help the program moving forward. Portantino's bill was to establish a constituent of emergency concern program, had the support of the water community, again, setting up a process to look at these constituents when they come forward, being a thoughtful process at the Water Board. Assemblymember Bloom, PFAS product registry was vetoed. DOD water rate assistance program was vetoed. These bills have nothing in common except one thing. The governor vetoed them and a bunch of other bills because they were not provided for in the budget. And he vetoed a number of bills that would have imposed billions of spending, additional spending, hundreds of millions, billions in some cases, of additional spending that was outside the budget. And the governor, being with an eye forward to this year, where the revenues are falling short of projections by at least $5 billion at this point, said, if it's outside the budget, I'm not going to sign it. And if it's not in our spending plan, I'm not signing it. So both of these bills fell victim to that, and I think we're going to see a lot of the same this year. And then finally, the Rubio bill made it easier for boards like yourself to continue to have hybrid meetings and not have to do everything in person, but allow for Zoom and teleconferencing. Next slide. So looking forward, one of the big things that came out last year was the governor's California water supply strategy, adapting to a harder, drier future. And I'm going to talk about this just briefly in the context of the work we've been doing with Western Municipal Water District and a number of other agencies throughout the state through the Solve the Water Crisis education effort. And basically, what the governor recognized in this report and what our coalition is doing is making sure people understand the depth of the water supply challenges that we have as a state. You know, it's hard to state it in a way that reflects the urgency enough. If you look at the climate models, if you look at the last couple of years, we are in a very, very, very difficult place, including Metropolitan Water District. And we're at a place where I think there could be measures taken that we haven't seen in our lifetime in terms of the types of conservation measures that could be required if we don't get more precipitation this year. This is an effort to make sure people really understand the depth of the issue, the challenge, and the need to find solutions. The governor's plan was very interesting because it's the first time that he identified, and in recent administrations, identified specific water supply needs across the spectrum in terms of investment that the state will need to make, whether it be above-ground storage, underground storage through injection, reclaimed water, recycling, the whole gambit, conservation. The one thing that the governor's plan did not do, which I think, you know, and your general manager and staff have been working, and we've been talking a lot about this, is really identify the need and then back into the number. I mean, when you think about it, if we have, in his report, he talks about a 10% water loss due to climate change. The loss could be bigger than that. That doesn't count what you need in additional water to supply, assuming we don't have a stagnant population. We're going to have more people, and we're going to have more demand over time. And if we want to grow the economy over time, we need to provide more water, not less water. It's a pretty simple equation. But when you look at your water supply tools and the investments you need to back into a resiliency number that says we need to, in the next 20 years, have not only preserve what we have, which is going to take huge investment because the way we capture water is through a system which is not designed for the current climate, or even historically was designed during a wet period. We need to capture water now during high flow events, radically different in the Sierras. Our reservoir systems, our above ground storage are not designed for that. We need to be able to get the water north to south in high flows. Our conveyance system is not designed for that necessarily. So without getting into all the details, bottom line is there's an effort by the water community to come together and start to say, which I think is a great opportunity for us to say, okay, let's solve this by having a comprehensive plan, a target, a financing plan, and figure this out. So it's the first time in a long time I think the water community is on the front foot, and that's a great thing. Energy climate, one of the things that agencies are taking a look at more and more is the nexus between water supply and energy usage. They're looking to squeeze reductions, CO2 reductions from every sector of the economy, and we're not out of that. We're part of it. And that could be including the energy it takes to treat water, the energy it takes to treat wastewater, to deliver water. So they're looking at climate solutions, and we're part of that solution. And so that will continue. Water affordability is an ongoing issue at two levels. A lot of the focus has been historically on the Central Valley and communities that are impoverished and don't have adequate water supply or adequate clean water. But you know, water affordability is becoming a problem up and down the state for retail agencies, compounded by the regulatory issues, the treatment costs that keep going up, the lack of supply, drought, et cetera. So it's something that we need to keep reminding people of. I mentioned the voluntary agreements, and I mentioned SB 1157, the conservation bill that passed. So that we'll be implementing and working on. So next slide. Looking forward, we had an election. I'm not sure you're aware. Joking. Redistricting shaped the elections this year significantly. All even-numbered Senate seats were up. All state assembly seats were up. Largest turnover in the legislature since 2012. So we have 30 new members, not to mention the previous cycle, which had at least a dozen new members. So we're probably up to 50 members all told over the last 2 years, new members because of turnover, special elections, people resigning, and people termed out. So it's a major overhaul, and the consequences of that are unknown, except that we'll have new committee chairs. We had a small speakership fight that seemed to get resolved for the moment, where Anthony Rendon will remain as speaker until June, and then Robert Rivas will supposedly take over after that, although until you get there, you never know, but at least that's the arrangement for the time being. The Senate's more stable with Senator Atkins still in leadership, but there's still some races undecided. But the basic, you have Democrat on Democrat races, you've got Democrat Republican races still undecided, but the numbers really won't change in terms of the current supermajorities in both houses. And I think the only thing that will be different, I think, is the mindset on budget. The governor's mindset has certainly pivoted in terms of we're moving from a period of incredible, unlimited abundance to a lot less abundance. And so that budget reality will start to shape. Some people will be slow to realize it, but it will start to shape what happens the next year or two. And last is ballot initiatives. There wasn't anything significant in our world, although it was interesting that the governor opposed what some people call the lift tax, the tax to fund EV infrastructure on high earners. The governor opposed it, I think and the California Teachers Association, in part because I don't think that they want to dry up. Well, one, the governor's concerned about people at the very high end leaving. Two, you can only go to the well so much, and if you're going to do it, it has to be for something that's the best and highest use of the money. And I think he's concerned that that wasn't it, because he put a ton of money in the budget for EV infrastructure already. And then he thought one company benefited in particular. So he opposed that. It did not pass. There were some sports betting initiatives that didn't fare too well either, which you saw on TV, the ads constantly probably. And there were a number of other measures. And pretty much the ones that you thought would pass, and the ones that didn't were there were really no big surprises. So, but I will tell you that the ballot initiative industry is robust and will continue, and there are a lot of people doing very well by it. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them, but it's thriving. So expect more for '24. Next slide. Oh, that's it. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, as always. You bring us good and bad, right? So it is what it is. Questions of my colleagues? No questions? Okay. I did have a couple of questions, Ed, because I'm not going to let you get off the hook that easy. So moving back to slide... No, I think it was slide 5. Slide 5, please. So, a couple of questions about AB 2142 for turf replacement for the non-taxable income. Great win for us, because we've been trying to do that for a very long time. So when does it go into effect? Is that a January thing?
January 1.
Okay, so, and it won't be retroactive for those people that have already gotten into the process?
That's a good question, and honestly, I don't remember the answer, but I'll find out for you.
Okay, because there are a lot of
I'll have to
people,
look at it again, whether it, if it grandfathers people outside the budget year. I'll get an answer for you.
okay, because that, I think that's really good for us to know, and certainly for staff to know, that if there's those people that can just wait maybe just a little bit for an advantage to take this advantage of this credit that we've been fighting for a long time, for people to do the right thing and to do their portion of conservation and what they feel is the best choice for them, you know, that would be a good thing to find out for sure, so we can
Well,
give them some advice.
I might have if I could use a lifeline, I think Carolyn's on the phone, so she may know.
Oh, okay.
Carolyn, are you there?
Carolyn, are you there? Phone a friend, that's right.
I am.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi there. I'm looking it up. I let you know. No, I don't believe it is retroactive because we, in addition to the legislation, we were able to get the water community $75 million in the budget for this program. So it's the program is going to be funded again. So we'll double check. I'm looking now, and if I don't have the answer by the time Ed's done, I'll get that to Michael for you, Director.
Okay, thank you so much. You know, because it's certainly something that we want to message out to our community and people that might be looking at this possibility or kind of starting the process. So we want to make sure that we give them all of the information for them to make their appropriate decisions. And then in regard to slide 6, let's talk about the governor now talking about water and us being on the table at this point to have those discussions in regard to, you know, yes, all of these changes that are happening, all of the restrictions that are happening, and sitting on nearly $100 billion in reserves. So has he actually committed any dollar figure whatsoever to these kinds of discussions?
Well, it depends how you count. So there
Dollar
was,
in my hand.
Yeah, right. So big picture in terms of a lot of the major things that are incorporated in that plan, most of those things are not funded. And unclear what the plan would be for funding them. But there was significant money in the budget 2 years ago. There was $5 billion approximately spent over 3 years on a range of categories of funding for water infrastructure. And there was more money this year related to drought. But the question is a good one, and it's one that we're driving at, which is, you know, you need a finance plan for over time. You need a lot more information, planning, goals, finance planning. The governor did allude into the plan to a potential water bond, which is one financing mechanism. But it's one of the areas I think we need to lead on and force that discussion this year. Because you can put anything in a plan, but if you don't have a follow-up, which is implementation and funding, we've got a lot of plans since I've been doing this sitting on shelves. You know,
Right.
I could talk about CalFed and all these other failed efforts where we spent a lot of money and didn't get much for it. So it needs that kind of discipline.
Okay, so a piggyback question would be, and I'm not expecting, because I'm not going to put you on the spot for this one, but this might be a follow-up question for you to get back some information to us. You know, okay, let's talk water bond. The voters of the state of California have passed water bonds in the past. How much of that money is still sitting at the state and not been moved forward to agencies with shovel-ready projects for those dollars to be committed and spent? I mean, and I don't, like I said, I don't expect you to come up with a dollar amount, but I'd be really curious to know, because the voters have really taken a priority in past years to say, yes, water is important, infrastructure is important, we want to fund these things, pass the bonds, and how much of that has not been spent?
I will tell you that in every year's budget, there is significant amount of prior bond money spent and appropriated for categories of funding, recycled water. I could go through the list, and it's embedded in the budget every year. So they are spending it down. How much is left, I don't know off the top of my head. But not only do they spend that, but they were able to supplement it with general fund the last 2 years because we had a lot of money. But there is, Carolyn, it's been a while since I looked at it, but we could probably find, what's left. But basically, they try to spend it every year, spend it down. So.
Okay, thank you. And appreciate all of your efforts in moving forward the solutions and talking about solve the water crisis and moving that initiative forward and trying to educate people and get people on board. Taking folks on the Delta trip and showing them, because that's what you're talking about, is to really have people understand and appreciate the urgency of the matter that we're dealing with, and that this is not an overnight solve. This is going to take some time to put infrastructure into place, to put all the plans, to finance them, to make all of those things happen. And so talking about doing the Delta trips and educating people, maybe there's some kind of a greater plan that we can come up with of how we create a video or do something that people can be a part of and do that trip with a Go camera or something. I don't know, but once you go into that, as a Met director and person that's afforded an opportunity to allow people, it's only a limited amount of people. I went on the Colorado River trip to take some folks, and I was only allowed 12 folks. And that's going to take a really long time to make an impact with that limited small amount of people. And while we try to bring people that have a voice and will message that out, that's going to take a really long time. So we need to try to figure out how we can package that information up so people really do understand the necessity and the urgency in what we're facing as water agencies, not just within our region, but at the entire state. So just a little soapbox moment,
Agreed.
sorry.
No, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Dinsdale?
Oh, yes.
If I,
The voice in the room, we hear you.
Great, as Ed's lifeline. Just following up on your question on the Gabriel turf replacement bill, the bill goes into effect immediately. So when the bill is signed, because it is a tax levy, and it covers the period of time you get the tax exclusion for work done January 1, 2022 through January 1, 2027.
Oh, good. Oh, perfect.
So it is retroactive, yep.
Perfect. No, that's helpful. So now we know how to message that out and how to move that forward to our customers that are taking advantage of that. So thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate that. And Ed's Lifeline worked. That's great.
Yes,
Phone a friend.
that's why we
There we
got
go.
it.
Okay,
And the other
perfect.
thing we'll have to obviously run down how they're going to administer the program, how they're going to allocate the funding, et cetera. But the good news is there should be enough funding there to take care of a lot of the problems, so.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ed. We really appreciate it when you come down here and, share all of this and everything that's happening up at the state. We really do appreciate the partnership and the information. I know Michael is always in constant communication with you so that we're always kept up to the changing environment up in Sacramento. God bless it. And, we look forward to everything that you do for us to try to get funding for our region and for our agency for sure. So thank you very much. And to Carolyn, too. Thanks for being the voice in the room, Carolyn, today. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the time. Appreciate it very much.
Okay. That will move us to our consent calendar today, folks. And is there any member of the board who wishes to pull any item off of the consent calendar? Okay, Madam Secretary, do we have anyone who wishes to comment on any consent calendar item today?
I see no request to speak at this time.
Okay. Looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Director Risby and a second from Director Gardner. Any other comments? We'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Torres?
Yes.
President Instead?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Very much. Moving on to items to be added to our agenda. Good morning, Mr. Miller. Anything to add to our agenda this morning?
Good morning. Nothing to add today.
Thank you very much. Legal counsel, good morning, sir. Anything to add to our agenda?
Good morning, Madam President. Nothing from legal.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move forward to our action agenda this morning. At this time, we'll go ahead and take 8A.
All right, thank you very much, President Enstead. Item 8A went through our Finance Committee. This is adopting a resolution approving a change of the grantor for our swap associated with our adjustable rate revenue refunding bonds. A bunch of financial terminology that Mr. Mascaro is going to make very clear for all of us. Kevin?
Well, great. Thank you. Good morning, all. I've significantly trimmed down this presentation for the benefit of all those who are hearers. But this item recommends adoption of Resolution 3259, and the resolution approves various legal documents that authorize 2 administrative-type actions. Each action is separate, but both are associated with our 2012A revenue bonds, so we combined them into one letter. The first action is to change the guarantor for the swap that is tied to the bonds from Merrill Lynch Derivative Products to Bank of America, North America. Bank of America owns Merrill Lynch and has requested this change as they consolidate their interest swap business. In last month's Finance Committee, we discussed the guarantor role as well as what the swap is in detail. So I won't put you through that experience again unless asked, and that information is in the board letter. And so based on analysis by one of our financial advisors, Fieldman Rollap and Associates, and Western's bond counsel, Best Krieger, this action to change the guarantor is cost neutral to Western and has no foreseeable downside or concerns. And Bank of America will pay us $85,000 for our legal, financial advisory, and internal staff costs related to the guarantor change, since it was at their request. The $85,000 is expected to be sufficient to cover those costs. The second action is to change the market index that the swap rate is based on from the London Interbank Offered Rate, or LIBOR, to the Secured Overnight Financing Rate, or SOFR. This change is necessary because LIBOR is sunsetting on June 30th, 2023, and a replacement is therefore needed. And many experts consider the recommended index, SOFR, to be a more accurate, transparent, and secure pricing benchmark index for the swap. And the Federal Reserve Bank of New York publishes SOFR each day. As already mentioned, both changes are considered administrative in nature, are cost neutral, and neither are expected to affect any other terms of the swap agreement. And so adopting 3259 would effectuate these 2 changes. Joining us via Zoom are Robert Poore and Laura Carpenter with Fieldman Rollap, our financial advisor. We've got Kim Byrons and Daniela Hernandez with Best and Krieger, our bond counsel, and Brian Rockwell with Bank of America. This concludes staff's report, and we are available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Secretary, is there anyone wishing to comment on this action item 8A?
I have no request to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of my colleagues to staff regarding this item? Okay, and is the members of the committee want to state what the recommendation was?
The recommendation was for the board to approve the change, and I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion? Did we have any comments that wanted to be made by our guest today that were in attendance, excuse me, in attendance from any of the organizations that did any work on this, Mr. Mascaro?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, I have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Torres?
Yes.
President Dinstead?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. And we will move forward to 8B.
All right, item 8B is to adopt Resolution 3261, supporting a grant application. Melissa is here. We've been very active in our grant applications, and here's another one. So Melissa, you going to give us a verbal report?
Yes, thank you and good morning. So our item today is to adopt Resolution 3261 for an Environmental Protection Agency grant application. Now, the first question you guys normally ask is, when are we going to be awarded or noticed of this? So I'm pleased to say we actually already have been. We have been awarded $3 million through this funding opportunity. In March 15, 2022, President Biden signed the Fiscal Year 22 Consolidated Appropriations Act. In this act, one of Western's projects, the Western Water Recycling Facility PFAS Treatment Prevention Phase 1 project, was listed and awarded $3 million through this funding opportunity. Now, kind of going backwards a little bit, that was in March and we're in November, so what happened? The federal government released and announced this act that, hey, we're going to give this money, and then had to figure out how they were actually going to administer it. So EPA was given the projects to administer. They decided what process they needed to do, what information they needed, and are deciding that they want a formal application. We got this information at the beginning of November. So we're processing the formal application. This is more of an administrative formality. We've already been awarded it, and we're just really going in through here and giving them the information that they request, which is why we need a board resolution. This project has already received grant funding from the Department of Water Resources Urban Drought Response Relief Program of $1.7 million. This is $3 million of federal funds going on top of that, basically making about 60-65% of the project funding covered through grants, both federal and state. So I'm available for any questions, but again, we are asking that the board adopt Resolution 3261.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, is there anyone wishing to comment on this item?
I see no request to speak at this time.
Okay. Any questions of my colleagues?
One, just for clarification, Melissa, how much is this whole project is costing us? It's gonna be
7.7 million.
Okay.
It's actually on the next agenda
Yes,
item coming
perfect.
up, so.
Perfect. I just wanted for the public knowing. No other question, then move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve.
Second, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Matlock, for all the hard work that you put in. I know, people don't really appreciate, but or just in general understand how much work it takes to not just apply for the grants, then manage them afterwards. And it's sometimes years and years that you're dealing with it. So thank you for your work. This is wonderful. And again, I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Melissa, so if we vote no, do we have to send the money back? Okay. Just checking. All right, any other comments from colleagues? All right, I have a motion and a second. Go ahead and call for the vote.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Torres?
Yes.
President Dinstead?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, moving on our agenda down to 8C.
All right, 8C, Derek Kwai is here to give us an update on this program. Now that we have money, it's time to spend it, and staff has been working really hard trying to plan out this project, and we're ready to start going. So Derek, can you give us an update?
Absolutely. So, good morning. This
Morning.
item is to address the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances treatment project. What we're doing is we're going to place at Western's water recycling facility, we're going to place a treatment system for removing these PFOS. These PFOS have been entering the collection system, the sewer collection system, at high levels as it passes through the March Air Reserve Base. where PFOS point sources and plumes have been identified. The plan is to design and construct at the Wharf plant the treatment system specifically designed to remove the PFOS. The total cost of the system is estimated to be $7.7 million. As Melissa just said, that we have been awarded grants for this that amount to $4.7 million. This action would approve the initial project budget of $2,166,667 in order to proceed with the planning and design phase. As the project budget is better understood and as the design progresses, staff will request additional appropriations funds. This action will also award a professional services contract in order to perform the CEQA, the NEPA work, and pilot studies, design, and engineering support services during construction. Western staff solicited proposals for this work on Planet Bids. We received 4 proposals. Engineering and operations staff reviewed the proposals and interviewed the top 2 proposing firms. Hazen & Sawyer was selected as the best team to provide the work designing this system. Staff negotiated the total fee for this work to be $1,574,559. Regarding PFOS treatment of recycled water, we are not aware of any other projects that perform quite the same thing. Nearly all of the projects are now for PFOS treatment of potable water. It might turn out that there are different challenges with removing PFOS from recycled water due to the presence of constituents that normally would not be in potable sources of water. This is why the project includes pilot studies whereby side streams of actual water to be treated will be treated on a much smaller scale to make sure that we have the right treatment for the full project. Staff believes the team that Hazen & Sawyer has put together is in the best position to give us a successful project. We have at the meeting Dr. Silvana Gu, who's representing Hazen & Sawyer. Both Silvana and I would be happy to address any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Okay. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on this item?
I see no request to speak at this time.
And did you want to have your folks introduce themselves and come up to the podium that are in person? Be happy to do the face-to-face intros.
Yes.
Good morning.
Everyone. I'm Silvana Ghiu. I'm with Hazen & Sawyer. I'll be the project manager for this project should it be awarded. I'm most excited to be here in person. I live in San Diego. It's beautiful the drive coming this way. I'm most excited about the project. It's at the front line of technology. As Derek mentioned, we have done a lot of projects. In general, the industry has done PFAS treatment in groundwater and surface water. So it is pioneering going out to the reuse water. And this is how it should be. PFAS is called the forever chemical. It's going to go in cycle unless we start interrupting the cycle at different paces and remove it. So it's a very exciting project for us as well as all of our partners here.
Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate you being here in person today.
Absolutely.
Any questions from my colleagues regarding this project? Okay. Any recommendation from the committee?
Madam President, the committee did recommend approval of this. I just wanted to say that this is another example of Western being a real leader. Nobody else is doing this kind of work. It's going to be useful not just to us, but nationwide and probably worldwide. So it's a big step, and it shows Western's continuing leadership. I led that meeting, but I'm not on that committee. Fauzi, did you want to make a motion?
Absolutely. I will make the motion to approve. We are looking forward. Thank you. As Director Mike said, that this is a leading edge, and I am proud to have Western leading this project. So thank you. Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go ahead. I have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Torres?
Yes.
President Instead?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Directors.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. We look forward to our collaboration and partnership on the project. Thank you. Okay, moving into our action agenda item 8D, legal counsel.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, this is a continuation of the agenda item that we had on the November 2nd meeting. I seem to recall there was apparently some confusion, I think, among some members of the public as to kind of what censure is and what the process is for censure. So I've brought with me a PowerPoint presentation. It's really an expression of disapproval by a majority of a legislative body of the conduct of one of its members. So it's an action that's provided for legislative bodies such as Congress or state legislatures or local legislatures. Next slide. There was actually a U.S. Supreme Court case this last term. It was announced in March of 2022 that deals specifically with censure by local legislative bodies. So for us lawyers, this is kind of a gold mine because it gives us some guidance in terms of what censure is and what the parameters of it are. And as the U.S. Supreme Court recognized in that unanimous decision, elected bodies in this country have long exercised the power to censure their members. That case involved a local community college district where one of its members, Mr. Wilson, had a disagreement with some of the policies of the college district and started making statements and filed lawsuits, and the college district, the board censured that member. And the member then sued the district, alleging that his First Amendment rights had been violated by the censure in the sense that he claimed that the censure was abridging his First Amendment rights. And the Supreme Court rejected that argument and recognized that censure is a longstanding practice of legislative bodies, and that a censure of one of its members for either conduct or speech does not violate the First Amendment rights of a legislative body member. Next slide. So I've described what censure is. It's probably important to recognize what censure is not. It's not a judicial proceeding. It's a purely legislative proceeding that's within the prerogative of every legislative body. It's not a criminal proceeding. It's not a civil legal proceeding, and it's really not a formal legal finding of any legal wrongdoing. There doesn't have to be any law broken in order to be censured. Next slide. Couple of examples of censure, just to, again, provide some context and history. The first recognized example of censure was when the U.S. Senate issued a censure in 1811 after one of the senators read a letter from then-President Jefferson that the body had placed an injunction of secrecy over the letter. And so the U.S. Senate censured that senator for reading that letter. Next slide. The next censure was by the U.S. House of Representatives in 1832 when it censured one of its representatives for, quote, insulting the speaker. So again, it's not just conduct, but also speech that can be censured. Next slide. 10 years later, the U.S. House reprimanded another member after he introduced a resolution that was thought to be damaging to international relations. That's all the history that we have on that, according to the U.S. Supreme Court. But again, an example of censure being used by a legislative body. Next slide. In 1884, the Senate issued a censure after one of the senators divulged to the New York Post a confidential message from then President Tyler outlining the terms of an annexation agreement with Texas. Next slide. During the Civil War, Congress censured several of its members for expressing support of the Confederacy. Next slide. And in 1954, the U.S. Senate condemned Senator McCarthy for bringing the Senate into dishonor, citing his conduct and speech both within the Senate as well as before members of the press. Next slide. So again, coming out of this College District court case that the U.S. Supreme Court handed down this last year, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, censure is itself a form of free speech. So the court held that while individual legislative body members do have free speech rights, so do legislative bodies. And that's really what a censure is. It's that legislative body expressing its view that one of its members has said or done something that it disagrees with. Next slide. The U.S. Supreme Court said that the First Amendment permits free speech on both sides and for every faction on any side. So again, individual legislative body members as well as the legislative body as a whole. Next slide. So that's some background. In terms of the specifics of Western's code and its authority, our code includes a provision that specifically authorizes a formal censure. Our code also authorizes reprimand, which is kind of viewed as a lesser form of disapproval, but we're talking about censure here today, so I just wanted to give you some context. And censure can include loss of seniority, committee assignments, or travel restrictions. It doesn't have to. It can just be a censure resolution that expresses disapproval, but it can also come with other consequences as well. Next slide. Under our code, a censure process can be initiated either by the board president, any board member through written request, or a member of the public can bring to the general manager's attention a request for censure, which is then submitted to the board president. So there are 3 ways that it can be initiated. Next slide. Once initiated, our code provides for a 2-step process, and I'll say this is fairly common. I've seen this in other public agencies, and the idea here is to provide some due process for the member who is the subject of the potential censure. So the first step, which is where we are today, is the board's consideration of whether or not to proceed at all. The board could decide you don't want to proceed, or you could decide to proceed. If you do decide to proceed, then we'd come back at a subsequent meeting and we'd provide the board an opportunity to consider the actual resolution of censure. Next slide. At the time the censure is first considered by the board, our code provides that the president can establish an advisory committee to review the censure and make recommendations to the full board. That's something that our code provides authority to the president. So if the board is interested in that today, it might be appropriate for you to provide her with that information. Next slide. If the board does decide to proceed today, a request for censure is then placed on the agenda for consideration by the board at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Next slide. The board president is to preside over the proceedings, but as I mentioned, it's not a court proceeding, and so formal court rules of evidence do not apply. However, under our code and general due process concepts, the subject board member is allowed to respond to the allegations that are used to support the potential censure. Next slide. As with most decisions of the board, our code provides that a majority vote of the board is required. Next slide. And the censure, if there is to be one, is to be documented in the form of a board resolution. Next slide. So hopefully that presentation provides the public with a little bit of more context and background to the censure. I'm certainly available to answer any questions of the board. Now it'd be appropriate to hear the president's letter, which is included in the staff letter for this agenda item, take public comment, then discuss and deliberate, and then provide any appropriate direction to staff and legal counsel.
Yes.
Thank you. You
I
mentioned.
don't know that your mic is on.
Oops.
Okay.
Yeah. You mentioned that censure is an authority of a legislative body. Can you describe for anybody who may not know how a water district is a legislative body?
That's a very good question. You are a legislative body in the sense, in many senses, but primarily in the sense that you establish policy for Western Municipal Water District. That is kind of the essence of a legislative body, as opposed to the executive branch, which implements, that's kind of our staff, or the judicial branch, which is obviously the courts. So you are a legislative body. There are other contexts, the Brown Act specifically defines you as a legislative body, but the essence of that is that you establish policy for this organization.
Thank you. And we also adopt, as needed, ordinances. We have a whole set of ordinances that the board has adopted over time. So
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Correct. Those ordinances memorialize the policy of this organization.
Okay, thank you very much, legal counsel. So this is what we're going to do for this portion. I am going to go ahead and make a couple of brief comments. We're going to go ahead and take public comment after that. I'm going to bring it back to the dais to afford my colleague an opportunity to make any comment that she would like to make in regard to all of those, and then we will have discussion. Okay? I have a few brief comments to make. This has been an arduous undertaking, which has not been taken lightly. The board has adopted a number of policies designed by their very nature to address the standards to which we aspire to be as a board and the leaders of the district. The district's vision and one of our core values is employee empowerment. Fostering an environment where organizational effectiveness is valued, mutual respect is paramount, and employee support and development is fundamental to our core culture. Our principles, our direction, and our core values are all paramount to our collective success as a district and a governing body. Each of these goals we established as a board relates to our performance measures and reflects the importance to us, this body as a whole, to set our standard to which we hold ourselves accountable. We have identified an ethics statement of policy to further solidify our commitment to the staff and to the public we serve, and I quote, "The district's board of directors has adopted the following as a district's overriding ethics statement, reinforcing the board's commitment to the ethical execution of its mission." The policy goes on to state, accordingly, it is the policy of the district that board members and district employees maintain the highest standard of personal honesty and fairness in carrying out their duties. This policy sets the basic ethical standards to be followed by the board of directors of the district. The objectives of this policy are A, provide guidance for dealing with ethical issues, B, heighten awareness of ethics and values as critical elements in board members' conduct, and C, improve ethical decision-making and value-based management. All members of this body should be the very example of this statement. As leaders, as professionals, it is simply our duty. No one is perfect. I certainly am not. Holding public office does not entitle one to personal advantages, perks, or to be unaccountable for one's conduct and behavior. We are the standard by which we hold ourselves accountable. Our standard of fairness, accountability, respect, and to be the example to the staff and the public. The item on the agenda today is to address conduct. This is not about silencing a voice. This is not about political gamesmanship. This is not about discrimination. This is not about disparagement. This is not about subtle racism. This is not about retaliation. This is not about targeting minority communities or Latinas as claimed in prior comments to this board leading up to today. In fact, our board is one of, if not the most, diverse in the region. We have board members from all walks of life, education, ethnicities, and religions. Over a year ago, during a discussion of the board, Director Torres asked me a question about my race and ethnicity, and was surprised to learn that I am both a Latina and a Filipina. I'm sure this information took many by surprise, as this has never been an issue on the board, as water knows no race and no gender. There are also a few statements that need to be factual and corrected for the record. First, the ethics policy was not created to get a newly seated board member. The ethics policy was adopted in August of 2006, prior to my seating on the board, and was revised in 2012. At the November 21st meeting in 2018, Director Evans, prior to the seating of Director Torres, requested that the board review and revise the ethics policy because of an issue arising from another board not related to our board or its members. The current policy was revised and had a unanimous 5-0 vote to adopt in August of 2019. Second, no board member has been placed on an agenda for censure prior to today. In June of 2019, Director Torres was verbally warned over the ethics policy for her violation and 2 fines from the FPPC. In October of 2021, Director Torres was formally reprimanded for a second violation of the ethics policy, having received a 3rd fine for a violation from the FPPC. There have not been 4 censures of Director Torres as stated at our last board meeting, nor has censure been placed on the agenda every 6 months. With that said, it's time to move forward and address the issues on today's agenda. Boards, by their very nature, were established to build consensus. It is through our life experiences and our differences that provides the perfect opportunity to have robust conversations from different points of view and to gain insight from each other. That's what makes us strong, diverse, and equitable in building consensus to adopt policies and engage in governance. It is when those discussions degrade into unwarranted personal attacks, insults, name-calling, profanity, demeaning and repetitive criticisms, and speaking over others that our core values must step in. This type of behavior does not foster an environment of mutual respect, collaboration, or civility. This type of conduct, this behavior, has no place in a public forum or in today's society. A difference of opinion can be said in a respectful, civil, and professional manner without resorting to negative behavior. There are just a few recent examples of Director Torres not upholding the standards the board set for themselves, with Director Torres' votes on the Western's ethics policy. I have heard her argue that she is exercising her First Amendment right to free speech. However, just like in society, free speech has its limitations. Free speech does not allow a person to violate the law, slander an individual, or create a hostile work environment. In Western's case, free speech does not allow for you to misrepresent facts, undermine Western's reputation, undermine staff credibility, or allow you to violate our ethics policy. Director Torres, you have made comments to our board meetings that were unprofessional and untrue about the agency and staff. You've made numerous statements at other public meetings misrepresenting Western's communications, rate increases, budget, and priorities. This is one of the leading water agencies in the state. We provide a life-sustaining resource to our community. We are trusted with providing safe, healthy, reliable water to support our customers and Riverside County's economic viability. As a public agency, we are charged with being good stewards of the public's money and making wise investments with that money to build infrastructure and to treat and deliver water that meets all state and federal health standards. We have worked diligently to be transparent and to build public trust. We cannot stand by and let one director put into question Western's ability to meet these important commitments. This board has given Director Torres a great deal of latitude in her comments in the last 4 years. Western has provided all board members with ethics training. Western has provided leadership training for the board to help improve their working relationships. Unfortunately, this has not been adequate to get Director Torrance to comply with the ethics policy. I am therefore left no choice except to take progressive steps in this process and recommend censure. At this time, we will go ahead and move to public comments. I'm going to ask Madam Secretary at this time, how many folks do we have that are joining us either in the room today or on Zoom who wishes to comment on this item?
President Dinstead, I currently have 7 requests to speak, 1 in the room and 6 on Zoom, along with written public comments that were received before the deadline yesterday. And the number's increasing, so we now have 8.
Okay, for those folks that are joining us on Zoom today, if you could please indicate at this time that you wish to comment on this item. Now would be the time to raise your hand so we can identify you.
I have 7 hands raised.
7 hands raised on Zoom, is that correct?
That is correct.
And 1 in the room.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and leave public comment at 3 minutes. I'm going to ask that we take the comments on Zoom first.
Thank you. Would you like to begin?
Thank you.
I'll call Stephen Figueroa.
Yes, I first want to apologize that I couldn't be there in person because another commitment, but I have been keeping an eye on the meeting. I would hope that your legal counsel first educates you on the case Victoria Baca versus Moreno Valley and the public's right to make comment without being threatened, harassed. Like, I understand the law enforcement was there, is there, and I couldn't be there because I spoke out. That is an ethics violation, and I would hope the board would take up an issue with you to censure you for violating Baca versus Moreno Valley. Okay. On the issue of this, I read your speech as a complete attack on Ms. Torres violating your ethics clause that you said not to. It's very concerning that you say one thing and do another. I kind of feel like I'm talking with Donald Trump. We've been there for many of your board members when you served on other legislative bodies to advocate for you when you guys spoke out, and like the city of Riverside was going after Mike for a while when the mayor and him were having it out, and we all know that, but nobody took measures to censure you. What Gracie's doing is right. To her right to say, is this a violation of the Brown Act? I want to question the work standards. I want to do this. That's just called good governance. As a voting member, and Mike, when you first got elected, I gave you money each and every election. So I'm going, wait a minute here. How can you be doing this? You used to speak out just like I did all the time. And you spoke out on the council and you had disagreements with people. So, and Brenda, if you don't like what people are saying, then you shouldn't be board president. This isn't Colombia. This isn't Venezuela. It's not a dictatorial or a communist country. We have the right to give our comments. And it's not an ethics violation. So please, I'm hoping you read Victoria Baca versus Moreno Valley. It was very costly to that legislative agency for violating the rights of individuals giving public comment. Gracie, I want to champion you, and I think all the board members there should champion you for having the courage to speak out on issues, even though others fear to speak out. And it's like, if you don't agree with them, we're going to censor you. We're going to attack you. I mean, that's gang member mentality. So while the rest of the public applaud you, the ultimate a measure of your work is you got more votes than everyone else. And I just believe they're jealous. They want to take that away from you so they could put somebody, a puppet there, who will do their bidding and just go along with them. We expect the board to debate and challenge each other on issues, to ask questions. When you get 4-0, 5-0, and all those other votes, to me, you're just all going lockstep. And please vote against the censor, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will call Frank Montez.
Good morning, Board of Directors. My name is Frank Montes, and I'm a small business and community advocate. And I represent the interests of over 800,000 Latino small businesses across the state of California. I want to first congratulate Director Torres on her impressive reelection. Director, you ran an impressive and positive campaign, and it resulted in a landslide victory of over 60% of the vote. The constituents of your district trust you and entrusted you for another 4 years. I understand approximately 43% of your constituents are Latinos, and as an advocate for the Latino community, we are proud to see you continue to represent your constituents as well. So again, I just want to congratulate you, Director Torres, and it is my hope that the divisive behavior and threats of censure will stop, so you can all work together to achieve what you all set out to do when you ran for office. I also want to say that the only grounds for censure is that Director Torres asserted a Brown Act violation and looking out for the constituents and the board and the Constitution. Again, I can assure you that if we start peeling the onion, every single one of you should probably be up for censure. The speech I just heard from the president, I can touch on so many issues, but I promised many that I would be as civil as possible. And my comments, when they are said, that is my First Amendment right. Again, I echo Steve Figueroa's comments. Madam President, if that chaps you and bothers you, maybe you should consider not being on this body. We, as public servants, need to hear the concerns of our fellow colleagues, the concerns of our community. And this is not playing checkers when you're on this board. It's tough to do the business of the people. We all understand it. And again, I hope that you all vote no on this censure and heal our community, because this is going to do nothing but divide our community even more and continue the divisive behavior that we have all seen, not just in the last few weeks, but in the years that Director Torres has been elected. And again, we are watching. We are not going anywhere, people. Again, to our community, please support Director Torres. We all do, her constituents do, by over 60%. That speaks volumes. You cannot turn away the vote and the rights of the community. Thank you.
At this time, I'll call Ana Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you, and good morning. Happy Wednesday to all, Board of Directors, staff, and community. My name is Ana Gonzalez, president of the Chicano Latino Caucus of San Bernardino County. First, I am here to congratulate or endorse Western candidate Gracie Torres, in which 60% of the voters, over 60% of the voters voted for her, obviously for her great leadership and dedication to not only this agency, but for the entire Inland Valley region. Secondly, I am here to speak about this ridiculous censure, which we understand it is a disciplinary action and will not violate First Amendment rights. It does, however, send a message to those 60% of the voters who reelected her, and the 47% of the Latino community she now represents. This is an unfair process. This is for sure a discriminatory action to a Latino leader who has questioned the leadership and staff for the sole purpose to inform and educate the community about the governance practices of this agency for transparency. True leaders ruffle feathers. This is a democracy, not a dictatorship. And as leaders, we are entitled to speak up for the best interest of the people we represent and to the tax and ratepayers. Keep this indoors in closed session. Don't waste the resources of this agency on these matters that should be rather spent on how to best service the community and continue the efforts to bring clean water to our BIPOC communities. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and this is clearly a waste of time. Vote no on this censure, do not recommend it, and handle business like adults. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll call Andrew.
Good morning, board. My name is Andrew. I just wanted to make a few comments on this item. As a Latino myself, seeing a Latino leader and having seen Director Torres be a true champion, not only on the board, but in the community, this is truly shocking to me in seeing that Director Dinstant decided to make this decision. Director Torres has been nothing but ethical and responsible in every decision that she's made, not only on the board, but in the community. Being a dissenting voice on the board should never be an issue. As some of the other comments made by folks like Anna and Frank and Steve, this is a democracy. This is an opportunity to talk, to share, to learn, and it's truly disheartening seeing the board make these actions. Furthermore, this is clearly politically motivated. The past few meetings, comments, as well as action items have been taken specifically targeting Director Torres. I don't know why. I would hope President Dinstant and other board members can share why they're specifically attacking Director Torres. Are they worried that they see that she has a lot of community support? I don't know. But most importantly, this is clearly politically motivated, and I hope that you spend your time and resources on figuring out drought solutions and not wasting your time on political showmanship. So I urge you to vote against the censure of Director Gracie Torres. Thank you.
I'll now call Beverly Arias.
Good morning. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hello, board. Yes. First of all, I do want to congratulate Director Torres.
Are you there? We can no longer hear you. Would you please stop the clock?
Hello?
There we go. We're going to ask you to start over. If you would not mind, we lost your audio.
Sorry.
No,
Okay,
go
I'm right
ahead.
here.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, thank you, board, for your time. I just wanted to first of all congratulate Director Gracie on her win of over 60% of the vote. I am listening to the comments, and the president had she made a statement about a hostile work environment, and I'm kind of seeing this right now, and it does look like a political move, and because Director Torres is exerting her rights, it seems like she's being retaliated against. So I will make my comment brief and just say that I am just hoping, just like Director Anna had spoke before, that you all will take into consideration for these types of matters to keep it closed and not using public time and resources on these types of matters, that you please consider a no vote on pursuing the censure towards are supported, obviously, the 60%, Director Torres. And again, yes, my name is Beverly Arias. I am a constituent also. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now call Barbara Ankley. Ms. Ankley, you're muted. If you could please unmute and we'll start the clock.
I'm so sorry. I missed that. Thank you. A little over 10 months ago, I spoke with you about leadership, professionalism, and service. I talked about commitment to focus on and do the work of the district, of exhibiting respect at all times for each other, for the staff, and for the public. I specifically discussed proper behavior on the days and in other meetings. And as one who has served and been in leadership on various boards over the last 35 years, I was serious then and am serious now about the enormous responsibility our board members have in leading our water district. I have attended and watched Western's board meetings and committee meetings for many years. In reading the board packet about this item today, there are so many things that could be said. I'll start with a question though. Why has this unprofessional and negative behavior been allowed to go on so long? If this had been dealt with sooner, maybe we wouldn't be at this point. Director Dinstad briefly touched on the length of time, but perhaps she could elaborate as to why. Given so much to address, I'll narrow my comments to this. This issue isn't about the First Amendment. Director Torres, as every other board member here, has always been able and will continue to be able to express her opinion and try to persuade her colleagues to see things from her perspective. No one is saying Director Torres cannot speak. This is not about violating her rights or the rights of her constituents. This is not about race or gender, and it's not about politics. What it is about is specifically her behavior to the public, her behavior to staff, and her behavior to other board members, whether it's on the days or in closed session. Based on the documentation provided in the board packet, it is clear this inappropriate and unprofessional conduct needs to be dealt with. Elected officials are held to high standards, or at least they should be. The goal here is a genuine change in behavior so that the board, the staff, and the public can have confidence that going forward, Director Torres will conduct herself in a professional and respectful manner. That's what this is about. I trust that this board will do the right thing and get the behavior addressed so that we can move forward. Thank you for listening to my comments.
I'll now call Jesse and Mary.
Give me 1 second. Good morning, board. My name is Mary Sandoval and Jesse Sandoval is next to me. We believe that elected officials, they have to find common ground and work together regardless of personality conflicts. You may not like your colleague, but you have to work together. Censor is a divisive and dangerous tool that should be reserved for most egregious acts. I truly believe that Director Torres has done her job. It's important that a board member, a director, speak up for what they think is not correct. Director Torres had the largest union support her. Over 60 unions stood side by side. I watched her Facebook, and she's an amazing young woman, and I believe that this censor would only create a device between all board members. I believe that you all need to learn to work together regardless of how you feel about one another. I am so proud of you, Director Torres, for standing up for what is right. I believe by stifling her, by not allowing her to speak, you're not allowing her to do her job that she was elected to do. Thank you for your time.
Yes, I also like to congratulate Director Torres. She's able to work across lines and talk to people and get things done. To do this censure on someone that's capable of, crossing lines, talking to other people, and working with each other is an incredible person to have on any board. So I congratulate you, and I truly support her in whatever she does. Thank you, Director Torres.
Are there any other members that are on Zoom that would like to make a comment before we move to the room? Seeing none, I'll call Maribel Nunez.
Hello, Maribel Nunez. I'm a constituent of, my board member is Mike Garner. I live in downtown Riverside. And yeah, I think I agree with a lot what has said before. I do disagree with the president, with all due respect, on the letter in for censure or sanction against board member Gracie Torres. And I know that what majority, or if not more than half of the public comments were in support of, or not support of the censure and sanction. And I know people keep saying, oh, it's just not going to, council member or board member Torres can't speak, but it's more of a disciplinary action. But I think it's a statement. You're disrespecting the voters. The voters spoke loud and clear that they disagree with the statement. They're paying attention how the board member Torres is behaving with the staff, with the board, and so they don't agree with. There's a disconnect between the voters and the president here with the letter that you're putting together. So I really would ask you, Mike Garner, you are my board member, to please vote no. We're asking you to do the right thing. And, but yeah, the censure is divisive and dangerous. We're already through the elections. Let's get things done. It's beautiful to hear, there was unanimous and cordiality support from some of these items, the project budget for design and other good stuff. But, we need to talk about rental, just utility assistance. We're still going through COVID. Those are the kinds of things I want to hear about. I don't want to hear anything about censoring or sanctioning or whatever to an elected that got majority of the vote, if not more than the vote. So it's a landslide election that she got the win. But so I do ask Mike Garner, do the right thing. You are my board member. And everybody else, please do not support this. Thanks so much.
Seeing no other members in the room to speak, Director Denstedt, would you like me to move to the written comments?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll begin by saying that Maribel Nunez did also submit 2 written comments before the deadline yesterday. They are of the same nature, and I will not read those specifically since she made verbal comment today.
Thank you.
Those comments were provided to the board, however, yesterday evening. The first written comment is from Jeffrey Mays. Mr. Mays states, please read out loud. Hello, board members. I am happy to congratulate Vice President Torres on her re-election to the Water Board. I first met Director Torres as she walked door to door to earn my and my family's votes. Director Torres told it like it is. Even though didn't agree on party politics, her focus to transparency and affordable water is what sold me. Now I am writing in amazement as to why her colleagues would override our will, the people's will, and consider censuring someone for trying to do her job and ensure we have access to public documents. Questioning staff is not just her right, but responsibility. If she isn't asking hard questions, who will? The other conduct items noted are vague and also hold no bearing on us who elected her, as we are grateful that she is passionate enough to fight for us. I ask you to not waste any more time on the silly item and work together to represent us rather than silencing our representative. Thank you. End of comment. Spencer, would you please put the timer up? Thank you. The next comment is from Amanda Turch. Her comment reads, please read out loud. I want to begin by congratulating Vice President Gracie Torres on her re-election. Her hard work and dedication to us really paid off, and we were proud to stand by her. I am concerned about the censuring item on the agenda, as it seems like all the accusations against her are infringing on her First Amendment rights. Not just that, a formal censure would limit her representation of the area that overwhelmingly chose to keep her serving. I ask you to stop this very bad public display of humiliation of someone who has been nothing but an outstanding public servant. Thank you. End of comment. The next comment is by Josh Brendan. It reads, please read during board meeting, board president, board members, and staff. I am writing in regards to item D. I am appalled that you would not be congratulating Director Torres as she deserves, but instead censuring her. We have reelected her not just because she is qualified, but because she constantly shows up for us and makes sure we have access to everything happening at the board level. Her pointing out concerns about the Brown Act is exactly what she was elected to do. Not only that, she is protected as a whistleblower for noting her concerns to the proper channels. Please get back to work for us together and vote against this item. Josh. End of comment. The next comment is by Citlali Chavez. Comment reads, to be read aloud during public comment. I'm writing in support of Director Gracie Torres. In my opinion, she has been an exemplary representative to her constituents, and that sentiment has been reaffirmed by her recent overwhelming reelection. Having watched previous board meetings, I have been disappointed by the politicking and attacks on Director Torres, and my hope is that you will see that ratepayers value her input and that you can end the nonsense and work together to address the real issues we have with water throughout our state and region. Do the right thing, table the censure talk, and move forward. End of comment. The next comment is by Anthony Breyer. The comment reads, please read during public comment. Congratulations to all the board members in this election, Directors Garner, Torres, and Denstedt. I am commenting on item D, which disheartens me because it will specifically affect most of the ratepayers of WMWD. Director Torres was just elected overwhelmingly by her constituents, and that is an indication of the type of public servant she has been. I ask that you vote against this item and focus on working together rather than fighting over what the agenda shows are frivolous accusations. Thank you. End of comment. The last written comment received was from Jessica Jimenez. Comment reads, could you please read this comment out loud? Hello, I am a UCR student and will be in Division 2. I want to begin by congratulating Director Torres for her hard work, which led her to be elected by a 40% margin. I don't know much about water, and I am sure much of public doesn't either, but what I do know, and the only reason I am aware, is because of Director Torres. She has taken it upon herself to work in the community and elevate conversations about water and job creation. On her own, she created a scholarship to help students in her area. I hope you will focus on her efforts rather than punish her for speaking out on her concerns. We are all also concerned that ratepayer dollars are being wasted on this rather than on us. Please vote against this censure item. Thank you. End of comment. And that is the end of the written comments.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will turn it to Director Torres for any statement she'd like to make.
Okay. Sorry about that. Give me a second. One thing I couldn't find, and I still can't, so I don't know if it's me, but I can't find the letter that Director Denstedt wrote in the board packet. Sorry, Jeff alluded to it being there, but there is another letter, but the one that she referred to, and the only reason I wanted to address her comments is because, unfortunately, it's all misrepresented. And I don't know if, we all have things that we perceive and ways we see things, but I can, with whole assurance say that a lot of her statements are misrepresentations of me. And so, but I can't find the letter. So I'll just go back to my original comments. As a member of the board, I've been exercising my rights and fulfilling my fiduciary obligations as an elected member of this board. One thing that wasn't noted in the presentation today is that board members cannot be censured for using their First Amendment rights. And that's essentially what I do when I sit up here. When I have questions, when I have concerns, when I go talk to the public, that's my First Amendment. Nothing that has been noted. I don't think anything on there mentioned any cursing. Nothing in there mentioned insults. And I mean, there was a closed session item, which one, I'm not sure that actually happened, and two, unless we open up what happened in that closed session, I don't know if I can even defend myself. So it's unfortunately kind of ties my hands to allowing me to defend myself. And I'm not sure if that's okay to have done in the first place, but regardless of all that, I do want to say that I sit here actually very humble. This is awful. Again, you know, out of all the board members, I'm the one that continuously sits up here. You know, first few times were on things that even the FPPC said were no wrongdoing, just, you know, do it better next time. But the board chose to go a different route and publicly present that. And then there was a false accusation. Again, I want this to really go. I want this to stop. I want to stop these circuses that we continue to have, and that seem to revolve around me. So I won't go too much further into that item. But really, I'm incredibly humbled. In a very difficult race with very low voter turnout. In a community that I've been working for for 4 years, going to meetings, talking to my neighbors, knocking on doors, picking up phone calls, becoming friends with ultimately strangers and trying to address their needs. You know, whenever I get a text message complaining about our water bill or you know, smell outside, I send it right up and I follow up to make sure that people are happy with our service, my public service and our customer service. I've become really involved in my community through nonprofit organizations, through my own philanthropy work, which is something that I never thought in a million years I'd be able to do, and it's only because I sit here, and I'm grateful for that. But after showing up for 4 years to my community, they showed up for me, a race that I didn't think was going to go like that. It was a harder fight than I imagined. Again, because of misrepresentation, almost the same things you heard today, people were saying about me around Division 2, and it had no bearing. People came out and they said, "We like what you're doing. Therefore, I'm not going to stop doing it. I'm going to work. If I'm not people's cup of tea, fine, I can work on those things. But to ask questions, bring up my concerns to who I feel is the right person to address them, that can't change because 60% of Division 2 said they don't want it to change. I have tried to be transparent and ask questions of staff, council, and my colleagues in the course of my decision-making process. I've asked for guidance. I've been guided in the wrong direction sometimes, but I've put my trust in that. While I understand that some may be uncomfortable with my governing style, I'm different. I'm a younger. I'm not politically savvy. I'm not a public speaker. In my actual life, I'm not a public speaker, and but it is my right to operate that way. I was elected once and re-elected to operate that way, to go and say, hey, I see concerns too. Let's address them together. Asking whether we are complying with laws and policies is not an indictment on anyone, not on the staff or the organization. And one would be hard-pressed to believe that my questions regarding the Brown Act would ever rise to a viable legal case. In fact, my constituents and ratepayers of my district demand that I continue to govern in this way and that I continue to question and call out improprieties as they may or may not be occurring. I have long been a target of certain directors for censure. Yes, Mr. Tom Evans put the censuring policy as his last act as director. And his first act as a constituent was to write a racist, demeaning letter about me and ask for the board to censure me before the policy had even been adopted. We hadn't adopted the policy yet. And luckily, I had 2 board members that saw past that and squashed it. It has to stop. It has to stop having, I'm grateful and thankful and humble that so many people have put out comments and taken time out of a Wednesday morning to call in for me, but I would rather they be calling in to find out about solve the water crisis, to find out about not having to be taxed on their rebate program, rather than and 6 months is just an average, 2 times a year, it's an average, but twice a year, once a year, coming up for this on things that have been frivolous, and in this case, almost even more frivolous. Because, again, I was doing what I'm supposed to be doing up here and asking questions, and asking them in the way that I feel is proper. None of the so-called findings rise to the letter of censuring. And the board is wasting time and money. I know the board item said that it has no financial impact, but Mr. Bellinger is not free. Us sitting up here, this isn't free time. We're using time, our efforts. All the staff is sitting in here watching. That's not free. And we're not talking about anything that is going to solve the crisis. I know now we've coined it, so now it's hard to use in another way. But our ratepayers don't want us using money on this stuff. And I know this because I've been out there. I've been out talking to all our neighbors, and why they showed out for me was 60%. As a professional agency, I would like to think that staff would not want to send out literature or reports with problems, that if something is not posted correctly, we could come together collectively to address it, and address it correctly, go through the proper channels. And when a question is asked, those things not be taken personally, but know that they're coming from a place of actual concern. Feelings should not be hurt simply because errors are pointed out. I also have the right to walk out or walk away from the dais if I'm feeling too passionate. And at that point, for any reason that I may need or desire to do so. I am not here to win a popularity contest, but I'm here to serve the people that elected me. And I do so in a certain way. It's not the most popular way, or it might be popular, I'm not sure. But what I do know is that my constituents have shown last week that they appreciate it. Transparency should be applauded, not thwarted. As members, we need to focus on business of moving forward and not continuing to waste time at our board meetings over trivial accusations. I'm ready to move forward and work together and continue the work that we were doing before to be a more united board. With all of that said, though, there are accusations made of me, not just in the board packet, but in the letter that was read. I'm not going to sit here and address them, each one. I actually have proof on my side, but I really do want this to stop. So that is those are my comments. We all have another 4 years on this dais. The best that we can do for the public that elected us is to work together and stop with these types of actions.
Comments from my colleagues?
I would like to make a motion to not do the censure, but moving forward, when we have committee assignments, we go back and we discuss this. So I will make that motion.
What do you mean, like tabling?
Yeah, not tabling, not moving forward with it, because this is what the censure can affect the committee assignment, right? We can take actions not having a censure, but committee assignments moving forward, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I would make a motion to table the censure and discuss something with the committee assignments.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No, just waiting for the vote.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call for the vote.
It's my understanding that a motion to table just requires a second, according to the Roberts rules. Doesn't require a vote.
I guess it depends on how the maker of the motion intends to frame this. Is this a motion to table, meaning that it may be brought back at some point in the future?
Sure, go ahead. Yes.
So I second.
I do believe there's another component, though, that there should be a vote on, and that is to have further discussion about committee assignments. So that would require a vote, I believe.
Should it be separate motions, or I'm just trying to speak procedurally? Okay.
As a practical matter, if the board doesn't take action on the censure, it's not going to go forward. So in essence, that's why only two votes are required. But in terms of having a positive movement on the committee assignments, that would require a vote. So I would recommend that there be a vote on at least that issue.
On talking about, that's what you mean, right? When we come back to committee assignments, talking about it then?
Yes.
Okay, then I still second.
Madam President, I'd like to offer an alternate motion, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can I ask for quick clarification?
Yes.
Tabling the item for the committee assignments until January, discussing it in January, is that what we're talking about?
That's where the committee assignment is going to be discussed, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But also in essence,
it's
also in
different.
essence, tabling the censure
Tabling the
process.
censuring and bringing back, talking about.
Right, thank you. I was just
the
looking for
committees.
clarification on the committee.
Which wouldn't mean that everything gets told forward to January. Mr. Gardner?
I think it is important that we have a discussion of trying to correct Director Torres' method of addressing issues. I don't think anybody has any concern about raising an issue. It's the way it's done that is troubling and hurtful. Free speech allows you to say many things. This position requires us to say many things, but in free speech, you may not yell fire in a crowded theater. We cannot insult our staff. We cannot insult members of the public. We cannot insult each other. There have been numerous attempts to try to change behavior, and they just simply have not been effective. And I think censure is the next step in trying to get the method changed, not the actions that any director wishes to take in terms of raising issues or proposing different ways of doing things or new ideas or opposing an existing idea. We all need to do those things. But we have to do it in a respectful way to each other, to the public, and to our staff. And that honestly is where I see the issue. So I would like to see us, my motion is to move forward with discussion on whether to direct staff to bring back a resolution of censure.
I do want to just quickly address Director Gardner's points. And
Just a second. There's a motion on the floor.
but the item has already been tabled.
No, it has not.
No, it has not. A substitute motion was made. Legal counsel, is that correct?
Yes, although it'd probably be appropriate to ask for a second before initiating discussion.
And that's what I was trying to do before we launched into discussion.
I'll second Director Gardner's substitute motion.
Okay? All right. Director Torres.
Oh, wait.
You don't have a comment now?
I do, but I'll wait.
Okay. We'll go ahead and call for the vote.
So is this the vote of the substitute motion?
Correct.
Which was to discuss? Sorry.
Yes, the motion is to move forward with a discussion now of giving staff and legal counsel direction on whether to move forward with a resolution of censure.
So just want to real quickly, I'll go back to my comment. When Director Gardner mentioned the method for which I do things, I guess it's important to me to make very, very clear that I don't do it to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't even do it maliciously. It really comes from a place of trying to do my duty. While yes, we've tried as a board to work together. We've had leadership training, and we've all sat through ethics trainings. Some of the things that have been mentioned are mostly a perception thing. I think there was one thing that mentioned, I called staff biased. Just like any excerpt, it was out of context. What I said is that they're human, so yes, they can be biased. But what I was actually saying is that they are the most impartial. And so that's my concern here today, is that what things, at least how it was noted, and which is why it's probably best that we always try to bring things in full context or with full transparency, is that my comments are pulled out of, certain comments are pulled out of and questioned, rather than seeing really what the intent is behind what I'm saying. When I'm concerned about something not being posted correctly, it's not because I want to create an issue and I want to call fire, but because it's our job. Because it's our job to do so. We should all want to make our product as a board be better, the things that we're voting on be better. We should all want those things. Like I said, I'm willing to work on and help make this better and work together. But what I won't do is continue to ask questions and continue to have concerns, because the public asked me, has essentially chosen me to continue. But I do apologize for feelings that have been hurt. I do apologize if I am too coarse but it's never personal and it's never meant to hurt anyone. I think from anyone sitting up here, I'm the one that empathizes the most with the work that we're doing from just based on my background, but understanding and coming from a workplace also that, coming from a workplace also that our work is critiqued and pushed. I'm staff also, but as board members, one thing that my concern is that if we set precedents on something that isn't, that has no findings, 6 things written vaguely on a piece of paper, 2 of them coming out of closed session, therefore I can't even defend myself. And then a letter that was read on the dais, I don't have access to, again, not allowing me to defend myself. And the reality is that if I did sit here and go down every example that was written, I would have the proof behind me that it's misrepresentation. But the things that are perceived as rude, I apologize for. The things that are perceived as being personal, I apologize for, and I can work on. But my actions to ask questions, to call things out that I'm concerned about, ensure that we're obeying and complying with the law, those things, I hope that that's not what you're asking me to apologize for or hoping that I stop doing, because I can't. It's my job. It's my fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the Brown Act is complied with. It's my fiduciary duty to push it up the ranks where when I see it needed to be. And it's my job to make sure that we are working, at least myself. If it doesn't bother anyone else, I want to make sure that when I'm taking votes, they're properly done. Too, that if nothing else, holding my own integrity in question and make sure that when I'm voting on something, it's done with my full understanding, with my constituents at best interests at heart, and making sure it's done properly and in a right way and through process. I think that's probably one of my biggest concerns is when I ask, hey, did this go through committee or did this happen here? How come this didn't, but that did? It's never, I think it's been called gotcha, but it's not a gotcha. It's Gracie, Director Torres is actually concerned. That's coming from a genuine place. And not a place that I can apologize from coming from. But I can apologize about my approach if it seems like it's too coarse, but it's not intended to hurt anyone. And it has not been found to hurt anyone. That's my understanding. There's not been any findings of that. And so I want to, like I said, I do want to apologize and be transparent that in my views and the way I see things. But really, my biggest concern is the public that you're silencing. 60% of them said, we appreciate the way Director Torres is transparent with us. And I can only assume that also means while on the dais.
Okay. I'm going to address a couple of comments, and I appreciate your statements, Director Torres. This is not about silencing your voice. This is not about addressing you being able to have and affording you the opportunity to ask questions, because that's always been afforded to you. It is the manner in which you address people. The use of profanity is not acceptable. Profanity has been used on a number of occasions. And I would ask you a very simple question, that you don't believe that your comments have been hurtful or have been derogatory in fashion or have affected others. I would ask you the question, have you asked those individuals, have they affected them? The general manager in particular, where you've told him to Thank you for mansplaining to me. That is a derogatory terminology that has no place in professionalism and has nothing to do with your ability to be able to address a topic, because it is simply a question that you could ask the general manager and conduct yourself in a respectful manner with courtesy to him. It is not about the election results, and it is not about making comments and the assumptions. You insult the rest of us by saying that you're the most empathetic up here. We're all up here for various reasons, and for you to make an assumption that you're the most empathetic insults the rest of us. That is an assumption on your part, because we've all been affected. I had a lawsuit over my home, and that brought me to this place. It affected me and my family greatly for years. So I have a tremendous amount of sympathy, and I take absolute offense to you having to make a comment that tarnishes the reputation of the individual who occupied that seat prior to you by stating that his comments were racist in nature. In your comments, I have the board packet, the minutes that were produced, and the comment that was written by Tom Evans, who is a tremendously respected individual in the community and is highly ethical in his conduct, and I've found him to be nothing less than that. And it reads, Craig, please give this email to each director and reflect it in public comment next Wednesday. WMWD directors, I am in writing and reference the FPPC violations by Director Torres. The FPPC ruling is attached for your information. These violations were willful and not by accident. The reporting rules are very straightforward and easy to comply with. The FPPC rules are designed to enhance transparency. She did the opposite. WMWD has received awards for its transparency actions and policy. Director Torres' actions are a blemish on the district. The questions now is what you as a board will do in face of this clear ethical failure. The fact that you are considering a censure policy does not restrict you from taking action now in the face of these violations. To demonstrate that you do not condone this ethical failure, I recommend that you do not authorize Director Torres to represent WMWD at any outside agencies or functions beyond her basic duties at the board or WMWD committee meetings. She can certainly represent herself, but not the district, and not for compensation or expense reimbursement, and I recommend that this restriction be placed for a year, during which time she can demonstrate to the board that she is in compliance with all FPPC rules. This is very easy for her to accomplish, since all her filings with the FPPC are public records. Thank you, Tom Evans. There is nothing indicating a racist comment whatsoever in this document, which is what he produced as a public comment in relationship to the board packet that was issued, that we didn't even take his recommendations, and it was given as a warning for you to be in compliance, and that you corrected all of your reports at that time. That's what this is about. It is about misrepresenting the facts, making comments, using profanity, using derogatory terminology, speaking down to your colleagues. And while your conduct from closed session was addressed, no content of the closed session was addressed. And the minutes reflected that you left. And all of us were present and know exactly why you stormed out of that room, why you slammed your hand down on the desks in there and the conference table, and the use of profanity as you left and slammed the door. We have afforded a number of opportunities, because I understand sometimes you just get caught up in the heat of the moment and are very passionate. We all are. That's why we're here, because we've elected to stand up and be public officials and do public service. We all make mistakes, and it's been afforded to you through conversations that you and I have had personally to address these things, to leadership training that we all signed on and had in length discussions. In fact, 14 hours worth of opportunity has been afforded because it is not about questioning staff. You are certainly welcome to ask questions to staff. It is the manner in which they are addressed. With that, I will go ahead and call for the vote. Madam Secretary, on the substitute motion.
Can I have a second to address? I tried the whole time not to talk over you because I know that is something I need to work on, but Director Denstead, again, a bunch of misrepresentation. Just the word blemish for a person of color is a very racist remark. To call me a blemish when I've had 2 weeks on the board. I had been on the board for 2 weeks when he filed the complaint, and I had been on the board for maybe 3 months when he sent this letter. And I hadn't served, I hadn't done very much, but sit here and learn. And he called me a blemish as a person of color. That is absolutely a very whistleblowing, racist remark. And I'm sorry that you would apologize for him. I had 2 directors. This was the first time Don Galliano pulled me aside and apologized. He said to me, I knew Tom to be a different man, because even they saw how awful that letter was. Bob called me, told me the same thing, that they were surprised he would write a letter so disparaging on a board member that had literally just started, had just begun. And so I want this to go away, but at what point will I get the chance to go through every one of the accusations? I don't remember saying anything in closed session about mansplaining, and if I did, I apologize, but I don't even have the chance to explain myself in or out of context because it is a closed session item. I'm not awarded the same due process or the same, even just the same amount of time that Director Denstead sat down with whoever got her all of these documents that she's going through and highlighting and had prepared formally. I was here to address the board letter, and she came with ammunition and more ammunition. I don't have the chance to defend myself. I don't have the chance to bring up how many people from the public have said that they've been solicited to file anonymous complaints about me. I don't have that chance to do that, and I don't even want to do all that because I would rather this just end. I would rather this go away. I don't know. I don't know at what point. I have to make it very clear that nothing has been founded on me. I don't know who to ask if I've hurt their feelings because things come in anonymously or through Director Denstead. So I don't know if these things are real because they don't come to me, and then things are not. There was no investigation, not through this process at all. So again, nothing was founded, and the general counsel has made it clear it doesn't have to be. But what I do know is that a lot of the things that she just mentioned are misrepresentations of my character, of who I am, of what I do, and why I do it. I think one of the things that was brought up in the board packet was me storming out of a meeting. Again, doesn't give me the opportunity, a closed session meeting, but doesn't give me the opportunity to defend myself because then I'm tied to the fact that I can't speak on what was going on in the closed session meeting. Maybe we ask ourselves what was going on in there that led me to be so passionate, but I can't speak on it, or can I, legal counsel?
If you don't divulge any confidential information, you can speak on it. Alternatively, you could ask the board if they are agreeable to waiving that closed session privilege. Those are 2 options you have.
But and I think I think that is my point here, is that a lot of things are being lodged against me, knowing, and I think Director Denstead knows that I don't want to do this. I actually don't want to embarrass the district, and I don't want to embarrass any person accusing me of these things. Yes, I said I have the most empathy, more because I'm staff, not because I am most empathetic. I have the most empathy out of the board, and those are the types of things that are taken out of context and turned into something that it just isn't. It just isn't. Director Denstead, outside of these meetings, has taken very little time to get to know me, which is why I'm assuming that when I say something that might not be, to people's liking, or the way, it's the way I talk, she takes it to another, she takes it to a different level because she doesn't know me. She actually doesn't know me outside of these doors. She makes assumptions that if I'm claiming that someone said a racist remark, it's because I don't mean it. But the word blemish, to call someone a stain in something, and it be a person of color that has literally just shown up, that is a very strong whistleblowing microaggression that only is lodged for people of color, and people of color that that are creating that are creating change or issues. And so I'm sorry that I don't have the letter in front of me. Director Denstead does, but just when I was listening to it, I got triggered again. I remember all the harassment that I received on behalf of Mr. Evans. All of that was brought back up because it was constant harassment on his behalf. And I had just begun. I hadn't done anything at that point besides ask for live streaming. And so, yes, I'm sitting here basically saying that I would like, I don't know if that's in consideration, but if you're really considering censuring me, give me an actual opportunity to defend myself, to show the evidence that what is being said is actually a misrepresentation. Afford me the chance to, I don't know if we have to get into closed session to address the closed session issues, but
Director Torres, I do believe that that's an opportunity that you can have, and legal counsel can go ahead and respond to that.
I'm sorry, to what?
You're asking a question
Oh.
to defend yourself. Legal counsel, if this censure were to move forward for the next agenda item, does Director Torres have the opportunity to respond?
Yes, and it's important to remember that that's why we have a two-step process. Today's agenda item isn't necessarily for all of the allegations to be resolved. This is really just to decide whether the board wants to move forward, at which point Board Member Torres would have an idea of what types of things are going to be brought back as potential bases for the censure, and that would be her real opportunity to address the allegations.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and call for the vote, because I think I've already tried to do that. I'm going to have her restate. I believe it's to continue discussion, which has kind of already happened anyways. Madam Secretary, is that correct?
The substitute.
On the
I just
substitute.
need to find it. Hold on.
Sorry.
It's all right. So the motion by Director Gardner and seconded by Director Roten was to move forward with the discussion now of giving staff and council direction as to whether to move forward to the full Board of Directors for consideration of a resolution of censure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry. So the motion was to continue the discussion or to go for a resolution? My understanding in the process was that something had to be decided today.
No, so the decision is not today, Director. The decision today is only to move forward with the resolution for censure at the
And that's
next,
what you're-
at the next board meeting. The motion was to continue discussion today about doing that. So
And-
discussion did happen, but additional discussion could
Okay.
happen after the motion.
And let me go back to the mover of the motion. Is that still your intent, Director Gardner?
Yes, my intent is to see if our board wants to give staff direction to prepare a resolution of censure, which would be considered at a future meeting. And the reason it's a substitute motion is the initial motion was to not move forward. And I think we should have some discussion about whether to move forward, hence the substitute motion.
Okay, thank you. And that's still your second. Okay, we'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
No.
Director Gardner?
Yes.
Director Torres?
No.
Director Denstedt?
Aye.
The motion carries 3-2 with Directors Rizvi and Torres voting no.
Okay, thank you. Comments from other board members?
Haven't gone yet, so, a couple people, I think, in their comments today used the word disheartened. That's how I feel. I feel disheartened that we are having to go through this, but it was because of a pattern, it is because of a pattern that culminated with another incident. And I think it's really important that we do take it, and the vote went that way, to a possible censure. It doesn't mean that yes or no that's going to pass, but it means that that procedure will come back, and then based on the resolution, we'll decide at that point. I was very disheartened when I heard Director Torres say today, this is frivolous and this is trivial. This is so far from that. If I would have ever thought that I would be sitting up on a board like this, an elected board, and having to even consider censuring one of my colleagues, I would have said, I hope that never happens in a million years. It is not something that I am getting any pleasure out of. It is painful. It's embarrassing to our agency. It's embarrassing to our staff. It's embarrassing to all of us sitting up here. However, it is a legitimate process. And we, as representatives up here of our folks in our divisions, as well as the agency as a whole, we sometimes have to talk about really sensitive and challenging issues, and this is certainly one of them. It's probably, I would think it will be the most difficult issue to discuss. So a couple, I have written down so many things from all the conversations today, but I'm hoping to just touch on a couple of things that I wanted to pull out to reiterate or ask about. There have been comments about the cost of this, okay, financial cost. There's a whole nother cost that I just kind of alluded to when I talked about what this is doing to the agency and our reputation and those kinds of things, and to us as individuals. But as far as financial costs, this is a cost of doing business. It's just like, in a way, an election. It costs money to have an election, and I don't mean what the candidates spend. I mean what agencies spend to, pay the registrar of voters to have an election. Is it a lot of money? It's a lot of money. Do I wish we didn't have to spend it? I wish we didn't. But it's a cost of doing business. So to me, to say that we should just not do this because of the cost is not right. We need to address this. I'm also very concerned with a few of the comments that Director Torres made, things like, I've been guided in the wrong direction, no specifics. I've long been a target, no specifics other than the Tom Evans situation, I heard that. Started to say something about you can't change, and I didn't get the rest of it. I think it was because this is who you are, but I'm paraphrasing because I didn't get the rest of that sentence. So we want to stop the circus. Oh, I agree 100%. I definitely want to stop the circus. I haven't cursed. I haven't given any insults. I don't think the closed session happened. Those are all to deflect things that are pretty cut and dried based on our staff report. We have dates, we have times. Do we want to have to nitpick and call all of those out? I know I sure don't, but it's part of this process. This is so hard and so difficult, but the five of us up here are gonna figure it out, and then I'm praying that we're gonna move forward from it. And this is gonna be, however this plays out, it's going to be in our past. And we're gonna move forward, we're gonna look to the positive things coming ahead, and we're gonna focus on that. And we're going to refocus on some of the water issues. We're still focusing on water. Don't get me wrong. We are still doing the business of the agency, but it's kind of under this cloud that we seem to be experiencing. I do want to share something that I learned personally, and I've shared this, I think, in our training sessions. I learned about 34 years ago when I was working in customer service for a spa company, that perception is reality. So no matter how I say or do something, how someone else receives it is what's really real. And I share that when I can because I think it's an important lesson to learn, and I try to remember that when I'm speaking, and I try to think, how am I coming across? How am I affecting my audience or individual that I'm talking to? So that's just I guess, a word from, I'm not going to say the wise, but experience that I've learned in my life. I seem to remember that this incident on October 5th, which brought all of this up to the surface, I don't remember it as a question. Now, I have not gone back and listened to the tape or the video. I remember it as an accusation because I remember what my reaction was physically when it was said. And whether we were in violation of the Brown Act or not, which we were not, that has been established and stated, it was the accusation in the middle of a public meeting that discredits the work that had come previously. And by that, it discredits staff. And I think that is what has brought this all to a head. And when you add in the fact that there's been a pattern leading up to this, it's not in any of these papers, but if you were to go back and watch the videos of my appointment process, you would see some of the things that have been brought up today. And I'm not going to give specifics, but there were some unkind remarks that were said. Now, I wasn't working for the district. I wasn't a director. So that's a little different, but they came from the folks that were sitting up here. So as soon as I got on the board on August 24th of 2021, I did everything I could in my mind to put that process behind me and to go forward. And we had over a year after that of these leadership trainings that were incredible. And we worked together as a group, as a team, and it seemed like we were making progress. It really did. But then there were a few things here and there that happened along the way, and election season came and all these kinds of, crazy shenanigans. They call it the silly season. Well, it's way beyond silly. And that sort of sucked the life, in my opinion, out of all of this work that we had done for the previous year. So that's kind of frames, like I say, I'm not going to touch on everything I have written here, but I hope that that made some sort of sense of where I am with this issue. I don't want to be here. I wish it could go away, but we have a responsibility to this agency. Oh, one last point. This does not degrade the vote of the people. We can't kick someone off of this board. We can do this censure, which is an admonishment, but it doesn't negate all the votes and the obvious support that Director Torres has out in the community. That's all still there, and she's still representing them, and she is still doing her job up here and looking into things and asking questions. But this particular thing, where this has come to a head, has put the agency in a very precarious situation, liability-wise, culture of our environment that our staff works in, and more. So I felt like I needed to say something and try to articulate the 200 thoughts that are going through my head right now. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Director Roten. Other directors, Director Risby or Director Gardner?
I think the discussion today really illustrates why we're here. Director Torres doesn't seem to recognize that her manner of speaking, the words that she uses to people and about people, need to change. And I think that's what the board is trying to get across, that as a board member, none of us can behave toward our staff and the public and each other the way that sometimes you do, Director Torres. And we've taken other steps to try to correct that, and it hasn't worked. It continues. And you don't accept that maybe I'm wrong in the way I do this. That's really what the board, I believe, is trying to accomplish, is to get you to change the way you do things. Not change what you do. What you do is good. And I mean, you are at least significantly, if not solely, responsible for some of the better, improved public involvement that Western now provides. The live streaming of our meetings. I wasn't here, but I know you were involved in that. And it may have been a little controversial when it came up. I don't know. But that's a real benefit that you helped bring here. And I haven't heard anyone criticize the things that you're doing. The criticism and the concern is the how. And it seems as though from our discussion today that you aren't recognizing that your words are hurtful. And I don't believe that you intend them to be, but I think you really have to work on picking your words more carefully. We all have to do that. And, we'll all make mistakes once in a while. But I think Director Roten mentioned a pattern, and I honestly believe there is one. And that's the reason that I think a censure is appropriate to at least, bring back for real discussion at a future meeting, because that's the only step that I see that we have available to us to try to drive home the importance of how we speak to others and treat others. So, thank you.
Director Gardner, was that a motion?
I will make it be a motion. I will move that we, as a board, direct legal counsel and our staff to prepare a resolution of censure with findings and set it for a future meeting. And at that time, and provide it, as we normally post, meeting packages ahead of time, but I think it is critical that Director Torres have an opportunity to review what will be presented if this passes, and prepare a response. She not only has that right, it's the right thing to do.
What is the difference between what we just voted on and this motion?
To move forward. The motion that we just passed was to continue the discussion. This motion is to move it forward to a subsequent meeting.
Well, with an actual resolution.
With
that will be
direction,
prepared.
with direction to legal counsel. Okay?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right, so would you like me to read what I think it is?
Yes.
Sorry. No. This is a separate motion from the first motion that was voted on 3-2 to discuss. This motion was to move forward as a board to direct legal counsel and staff to bring a resolution of censure to a future board meeting where at that time it can be discussed and determined whether the resolution should be.
And specifically that there be findings supporting the resolution.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we clear on what the motion was?
Oh, yeah, I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. I'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
No.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Torres?
No.
President Dinstedt?
Aye.
The motion carries 3-2 with Directors Rizvi and Torres voting no.
Thank you very much. And for clarification with a question and a comment that Director Torres made in relationship to the documents that I have in front of me, those are all public documents from our agency and from my archives, because I think I've made it very clear to staff I save everything. So I have spent a tremendous amount of my own personal time to go through my own personal documents so that it was my report and my individual work and not that work product of staff. Okay, moving forward.
Can I make a brief comment?
Yes.
I'm apologizing because I unfortunately have a funeral that I have to go to, and I'm going to need to leave to get there. So in case you're wondering why I'm going out the door. And have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you. The same to you, and our condolences on your loss.
Drive safely.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the reports portion of our agenda this morning, this afternoon. Correction, sorry. General Counsel, do you have a report today?
Just briefly, as we approach the end of the year, our office will be preparing an update for the board with regard to new laws, so we'll be bringing those forward to the board in the new year, and we'll have printed copies available.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Miller, General Manager reports.
Just a couple of things. Tomorrow, we have our Western Retail Agency Roundtable at noon. So looking forward to that. We will have a representative from Metropolitan talk about the potential shortages that we're going to have to absorb this year. So that should be very interesting. And all of our member agencies are all invited, so it'll be a good turnout. Looking forward to that. And then finally, let me hand it over to Kevin to talk about our GFOA award.
Well, I'd be happy to. So the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada, known as GFOA, has once again given a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award to Western for its biennial budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022. This is the 7th time Western has received this award. Rather than getting a unique plaque each time, they merely give us this lovely medallion to stick onto with some bubble gum. But we've done so. To receive this award, a government entity must publish a budget document that meets program criteria as a policy document, as a financial plan, as an operations guide, and as a communications device. The award represents a significant achievement for Western and reflects the commitment of the Board of Directors and staff to meeting the highest principles of government budgeting. Special appreciation goes to Daisy Banuelos, our Senior Financial Analyst, for being the lead on compiling this 240-page biannual operating budget. So big thanks to Daisy for her work.
Thank you very much. That concludes staff reports.
That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to directors' reports. SAPA.
SAPA has not met since we last met.
Thank you. Met. That is me. There was a lot of awards of contracts, a lot of movement going on after a lot of discussion, and there was emergency contract that was issued for the Santa Ana River Bridge crossing, so the upper feeder. So we're wanted to get that moving and make sure that those repairs and what needed to get done and addressed was done in a most expeditious manner as we could.
Yes. It's done.
Yeah, exactly.
Done.
So, and then there was some reports. It was a pretty light meeting. The department had performance evaluations. These were deferred to the next meeting because there was a ethics training that they wanted to do for those members of the board who had not completed it for their requirements under legislation. So more to come on all of that. Okay. Cheeto Basin, Watermaster.
Watermaster meets tomorrow.
Thank you very much. CDA.
CDA had their regular meeting. Director Torres participated, but I listened in as the alternate. They took two actions. The first was to work on purchase or agree to purchase pellet slurry pumps. Those are necessary for cleanup of kind of byproduct of the desalter trains. They currently have a single pump system for that treatment. This will increase efficiency and allow them to treat more of the trains at a single time. Ultimately, it will save money. And they gave a grant of easement to Southern California Edison across some of their property for Edison facilities. And that was it.
Okay, thank you very much. A report from RCRA.
We did not have a meeting this month.
Thank you. WRCOG, meeting next time. Sarah.
We had a meeting last week, just regular items. We had approved the financial statements, got an update on the capital project. We had approved a member agency credit and billing from fiscal year 21-22, operating activity and reimbursement payment to Rancho California Water District for additional operational cost. Other than that, it was just regular items.
Okay, thank you. Aqua, we've not had any meetings, and there's nothing to report other than conferences coming up here at the end of the month. So hopefully you have made arrangements with staff in order if you'd like to attend that conference. Okay, director's comments. Director Rizvi, any comments today?
Yes, I attended the City of Corona Chambers Veterans Day event, and which was a wonderful event. I had not been to their Veterans Day event previously, so they really made sure that they made all the veterans feel very special. They were able to have them speak. It was a long program, but I really enjoyed that. So. That was a wonderful event I attended last week. And on that note, we will meet after Thanksgiving now. So a happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Gardner.
I'll just echo the happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I'm glad I'm not a turkey.
Oh, thank you for that. Okay, comments. I did attend the Economic Outlook with staff yesterday that was hosted by the 5 chambers and the County of Riverside. So always great to listen to what's going on in the region, how that's going to affect us, and look for opportunities to collaborate and partner with those bodies so that we can have discussion and keep pushing our agenda forward, right? Because if they want to develop, we want water. So help us to help you, right? I also had the pleasure of attending the Veterans Day Parade down in Marietta. I don't have to tell you, you know what? It was a phenomenal event. It was wonderful to see the respect, the crowds that turned out after such a long time of being in COVID, and the honor that we placed upon people who have defended our rights to meet like this today. So I want to thank all of the veterans out there that represent our agency and all the family members who support our veterans and the job that they do to afford us the freedoms that we have. With that, we'll move on to requests for future agenda items. Anything from anyone? Okay. I did have one brief request. Mr. Miller, if we could get an update on where we're at with doing the revise on our audio-visual equipment. Because this screen and it's falling down and tilting and doing things I'm over it. Yeah, I know. I'm over it. So if we could kind of get a position of where we're at, because I know we've been talking about and have gone out to bid on several occasions, and I know COVID kind of put a kibosh on some of it. So if we could circle back with that, that would be great.
Happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have informational items in your packet to peruse at your leisure. The next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December the 7th, also known as Pearl Harbor Day, folks. And legal counsel, do we have any closed session item today?
We do not.
Okay, have I missed anything on the agenda? Anyone? Okay, with that, we will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation today. We appreciate it.